A really quick editor's note. I went to edit this week's podcast and I found out that the audio was all wonked up. And then during recording, we actually had a camera fail. So, apologies. We tried to fix or salvage what we could of the audio with AI. So, if it sounds a little funky at parts, that's probably why. But hopefully, we salvaged what we could. We decided to put the episode on anyways because it was a good episode and we feel like we got into some good stuff. And then again, we apologize because the production quality has been a little bit lacking lately, and we're working to fix that. And hopefully, everything will be back to normal by the next episode. So we appreciate everybody. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
It had been a golden afternoon, and I remember having the familiar conviction that life was beginning over again with the sunrise.
I think I tend to gravitate towards the safer route with things because it's more predictable. You know, I can see what's coming, and he's just like, "Oh, just jump in and figure it out."
Yeah.
The trial by fire, and
I really like the idea too of that's all you're doing. Like when we're doing a creative thing,
yeah,
that's all we're doing.
yeah,
And like I think about this on film, it would always frustrate me when I'd be on a set and everybody would complain, "This isn't going according to plan."
mm-hmm.
And I just have a hard time working with people who are like, this is a shit show.
Mm-hmm.
And I would even like, when you're new, like I remember the first few times I was on set, you kind of buy into that a little bit,
Right?
Because you're just trying to be like part of the gang, whatever. I remember a point where I kind of shifted away from that, but that's all we're doing. That's the fucking job, is to get in and just dig up problems and then figure out how to solve them.
Yeah.
And I love the approach where he's like, "We're shooting a film." And it's like, "How are you going to do this?" And he's like, "I don't know. We're going to find out though.
Right.
By the end of the day, we'll know."
Mm-hmm.
That's all we're doing.
Yeah.
Like that's what we did with this podcast. Any kind of creative project we've done, we had no idea what it would look like as a finished product when we started it. You just go in, and it's almost a way to kind of quality control something.
Yeah.
If that's how you're looking at it, it's probably not a good way to. Gosh, it's so refreshing to go into a project, not with "this is a shit show if this doesn't go according to plan exactly," but just as the whole point of this is to dig up all the problems and to solve them.
That's right.
And to solve them, like, what is creativity? It's just problem solving.
And for me on set, whether as a director or producer in some capacities, or even just on some shoots I've done that are not local crew, and I'm just helping in a pretty low below the line position. Like, how can I just be a positive force to help wherever I can? I don't want to create issues. I don't want to kind of step out of my lane. I don't want to nothing like that. But because when I've been in a situation, directing, producing both, I'm like, I just always want everybody to be generally positive with what we're trying to do. There's going to be wild cards. Stuff's not going to happen. The power's going to go out. Someone doesn't show up with meals on time. Whatever these missteps are, hurdles, obstacles, whatever. But that everybody sees that you were genuinely trying to make something with positive intentions and high hopes, and that they're just gonna be another force of positivity to try to create the best outcome possible and contribute to the logistical and creative endeavor that it is. And so when I am around people that was a shit show, I'm like, listen, they're all shit shows. They're all, the house is on fire and you're just trying to figure out how
If it wasn't, it would be fun.
Yeah. So like you can lament it or just help and be nice. And, obviously if, someone's abusive toward you or, there's issues there, but.
And there's a distinction that should be made between being unprepared
Right.
You can be prepared and go in with this is going to be a shit show. We're going to solve problems, and then you can be unprepared and just like exacerbate the situation. But
Yeah, it's certainly not.
That's not what we're talking about.
Yeah,
though.
not an endorsement. You could just show up and literally make it up. It's sort of
come prepared, but then also know that everything's probably going to change, and come with the intention that things are not going to go as planned, and we're going to solve these problems.
Yeah.
We're going to figure out. If you don't know it, like you hear all the time, I don't know how this sequence is going to look exactly. I have a vague idea, but we're going to jump in. We're going to get into the current, and it's going to tell us how we need to do it.
Yeah.
And I think I want to lead any project, like take it from the top. Any project that I work on now, I think I want to, or that I lead now, just to take it from this. Don't complain about how this is a shit show. Solve the problems.
Yeah.
Like, we're here to be creative. We're here to come up with creative solutions and to figure out how to make this thing, something that we're all proud of.
That's right.
Don't come in with a negative, oh, this is not going as planned. I hate this. Just be a part of what's happening. Get in the current. Go with it.
Yeah, and see it for the beauty that it is. Again, obviously, if people are being cruel or abusive or something, there's something there. But if you have some people with a negative outlook, and then maybe somebody who's steering things, or people in above the line positions or whatever, with positivity, I just always want to be on set trying to give as much positive energy as possible, even if I'm starving and meal has been delayed. Because that's how I want it to be if I was in the position where I was driving things or had more say in how things go or what we do. There's like a, I don't know if it's audio or a video clip or whatever, but it's David Lynch like working with the unit production manager or producer, whatever, and they're basically telling him what restrictions he has on time on the set that they built. I think it's for the Twin Peaks reboot or something. And he just gets so frustrated. He's not being cruel, but he's voicing his frustration with not having any time in the space to just sort of like
explore.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't want to shoot like this. I don't want to just fire off all these shots and then just get out. It's like, I could spend 2 weeks in this beautiful set that's been built and all this stuff. And, that's part of the intersection too. It's not just confronting people, that are brooding over the fact that this thing's a shit show, but it's also, all of these restrictions and time constraints or budget constraints and things like that. And that's always something difficult to reconcile, I think, especially in cinema, is, the artistic flourishes that people, creating the work want to take, and the time and space they want to experiment and play and whatnot. Again, under the construct or umbrella that they're prepared, but that's part of the execution of it, is to have a little bit of room to play. And then, the people that are focused on the black and white, the agenda, the schedule, the budget, the this or that. So that's always an interesting intersection. I think last week or one of the podcasts in the past we talked about the Herzog documentary. Yeah, dragging that boat over the mountain. That's what I was thinking about.
I was thinking about that right now, because I'm like, you imagine you put some people like, so just I'm thinking of a couple of people who work like the Omaha market. I'm like, can you imagine how they would react to being on like
like that actor did, the German actor, freaking out every second. Herzog loves it, but that guy. Those few clips I saw from behind the scenes or Herzog talking about how he would just go berserk.
Yeah, he was like obsessed with his pure animalistic and tendencies. Yeah, no, I was like, our mind went to the same place.
Yeah.
And I'm imagining, yeah. Can you imagine some of the people that we've?
Wait,
I
we're
mean-
gonna what? Are you serious? You're serious?
We're getting overtime for that. What is the?
It's like a rowboat,
Sure.
like a steamboat.
We can do that with CGI though. Why wouldn't we do that with?
Yeah. Or a miniature.
Yeah, we just do a miniature.
Drag a miniature over a pile of dirt.
Well, they were trying to convince them
to do that.
No, it's like, people can tell. Like, if we're gonna make something and we're gonna make people believe the truth of dragging a boat over a mountain, we're gonna drag the fucking boat over the mountain. It's just like,
how amazing would it be if you were on that crew and you could surrender yourself to sort of his vision and just be like, this is what it is, and I am going to embrace the pain and discomfort and maybe at times thoughts of how I would have done this differently or this or that, and just going, well, this is what it is.
In pre-show, you were talking about how you just wanted to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I've been
seeking out discomfort.
Yeah, like stress.
And you talked about
I've been thinking, well, just
artistic constraints a little bit.
But before we get too far away, like you talking about, I've been thinking about the same thing in regard of it. Like I've been film streams, which is the local theater here in Omaha.
Yeah,
played Grizzly Man a couple weeks ago, and Herzog's one of my favorite directors. Poets, whatever, yeah. And so I've been, reading and listening to a bunch of interviews after seeing Grizzly Man. I've heard most of them, but he's the type of person you can listen to again.
Oh God!
And you get a new.
Yeah, that's right.
You have a new context going in. You get something new from it. And I've just been stuck on that idea of being so uncomfortable or putting yourself into these really uncomfortable situations and how that plays out in the long run, and then how we're so comfortable, but I think a lot of people, they're probably living pretty comfortable lives, but then if you ask, are you happy? Do you feel like you're fulfilled, or you're pursuing things that interest you? The answer's probably no.
Yeah.
And breaking that comfort and being on one of those crews. Why is the tendency to be like, this is a shit show, I hate this is terrible, rather than just giving yourself to that and knowing, like, I get to say that I was a part of dragging a fucking ship over a mountain.
Yeah.
Or any, replace that with maybe something a little more chill, but we're so caught up in the idea of being comfortable or being routine oriented, or creating art within really tight parameters. Like, I want to make great photos, but I don't want to be cold. I don't want to be wet.
Yeah.
I don't want to be hot. I don't want to be put into a socially uncomfortable situation. I want great photos.
Right.
But I don't want to do any of these things.
Right. But
I don't want to travel. I don't want to have to, expend resources. I don't want to put myself into a potentially compromised scenario. I don't want to risk getting arrested, or, I don't want to risk having somebody yell at me or think poorly of me. We've lost.
Yeah.
As soon as that's the trade-off that you're not willing to make, you're done with creating. I mean, maybe you can be, maybe you're Proust and you can sit in a room and, your creative genius will still, you're completely wealthy and you're in a room and your genius still manages to shine through, but for us mere mortals, like, we've lost.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's over once we start to get into that. And so I've been thinking, how do we escape that? And you talked too about, and I want to actually dialogue here, but we watched Thief last night because Matthew and I watched Wages of Fear and Sorcerer.
Double feature film streams.
Yeah, this was last.
I have the
last
soundtrack
week.
for Thief.
Well, so
Also, Tangerine Dream.
yes, so that's the thing is, I was like, man, Sorcerer. It seems like Michael Mann was probably cued in on this, or at least it's one of those situations where you have art of a similar. There's a zeitgeist.
Yeah.
That creates a similar result. And so Sorcerer, well, I was watching the whole time we're in the theater. Thief, this is Thief. The vibe is Thief. So I watched Thief, and I've seen Thief a couple of times. And all of Michael Mann's movies kind of carry this through line, but
They're showing, just real quick, they're showing The Keep coming up,
yeah.
by the way. Anyway.
But the through line of Thief, and I'll try not to really spoil it, but it's essentially this guy, and he's a thief, and he went to prison, lost 10 years of his life in prison, and he gets out, and he's really attuned to how valuable time is, how valuable, and that's kind of the through line of a lot of Michael Mann's protagonists. But you look at, his character is out of prison, and he's doing these jobs, and he's freelance. Right? I'm freelance. I don't report to anybody. I don't put up with egos. I don't have to da 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 da. And the whole thing is the inciting incident of that film is he decides, okay, I'm gonna partner up with this corporation, for lack of a better term, and we'll provide all the resources. All you do, you get paid, and it's great. It's gonna be great. They're providing for him, and they give him all of these crazy outlandish benefits, and they're like, well, yeah, we're gonna, we'll take care of it. House, wife, kid, we'll take care of it. And then you can look at it in a lot of ways, but essentially, he sells his soul to this, and it strips him of his edge, in a sense, and How do you conclude that story? Well, he has to find the edge again. And so, watch it if you want to figure out kind of what. But that's just kind of, I wanted to talk about something else. I feel like this is, it might connect. It might actually connect, but you kind of brought this in and dumped it on the table. I'm like, there's a lot here that I've been, I don't know if it's just mind meld or what, but I've been playing around with in the last couple of weeks. And we contemporary society is kind of geared towards stripping away that edge, whatever that is, for lack of a better definition. And how do we get that back? Do we need that? How do we create work if we're so obsessed with being comfortable? We gotta break things a little bit. We gotta get out of it. It doesn't mean that you can't have comfort in life, but does it? That's,
And, for me, what's the worst that could happen if I don't have or can't do what I want to do, and I part of why I was talking about it was I had to prep for a medical procedure, and I had to basically not eat anything for 2 days.
guess in the comments what that was.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll happily tell everybody, especially because, part of me actually on the drive over here was like, don't shy away from talking about the fact that, you had a colonoscopy, because not like a public service announcement, but, if you're 45 years old like I am, this is something to definitely do. And unfortunately, they caught, like a precancerous polyp early, and, now I'll be monitoring that stuff and working with my doctor, and 3 years from now, unless something else comes up, going for another one. And I knew what was going to come up with prepping for it. So, for 2 days, basically, you can eat, on each day, they say you can eat 2 eggs in the morning. No oil, no butter, no nothing, just 2 eggs. And then the rest of the day, you can, you can eat like gelatin and stuff like that. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to have electrolyte water. They say have a sports drink, because I think, classic
Most,
America, drink Gatorade, something that's more palatable.
Nice,
You mix it with
cold,
Miralax. Yeah. So I'm like, I'm just gonna do electrolyte water, coconut water.
We say
stuff
that's
that's
drinking, Cuddy.
certainly wasn't on the list of alcohol. You could have coffee. They say clear liquids, and obviously coffee isn't what we think of as clear. But if you hold it up to the light and you can see through it, it's technically a clear liquid. So I had 2 days of this. Yeah, and I'm like, I wasn't. It's funny because I'm like, these ideas about comfort and what comfort does to sort of, sorry, for lack of a better word, sort of like neuter, tame, feeling alive and kind of getting out to the edges of things.
Creating something that's
Yeah,
worth,
yeah,
worth. I don't want to say worth consuming, but because that implies that consumption is the goal of creation. I
Yeah.
don't believe that, but that's worth engaging with.
yeah, and allows for a interesting, fulfilling, expansive experience. Expansive might be a little dramatic, but anyway. So I'm looking forward to this 2 days. I'm like, I'm not often terribly uncomfortable. And now I'm not obsessed with comfort, like I'm not the person that's like, well, if I go on this trip, it might be cold in the morning, so I need this, I need a scarf, I need gloves, this, and it might be warm later in the day, so I need that, you know what I mean? Like I'm not like obsessing with that. But I've definitely grown acclimated to just, temperature 68 in the house. I've got clothes, I've got a truck, I don't have, I don't deal with a lot of adversity.
Oh, my music
Got
here.
music, yeah. I could stream the internet, turns it on, the kids, everything's relatively, good flow. And it's
You're gonna go out and shoot? It's a little cold.
yeah, right. Yeah, the sun's not out the way you want. It's a little windy, darn wind.
Yeah.
That's a bumper sticker I see all the time. Darn wind. And so it was just really fascinating to go through this process, especially as you're clocking your experience. Like, what's it like to have 2 eggs at 8 o'clock in the morning and eat nothing else the rest of the day? And by the end of day 2, how are you doing? It was both kind of great,
Spoiler alert. Fine. Yeah.
not horrible, but at times not pleasant, especially because you're clearing out your bowels. But even getting ready for the procedure and coming out of it, I got a migraine afterwards. This like 3-day discomfort-a-thon was kind of trying. And what's interesting is some of the things I did to sort of come out of it was like the first meal I had coming out of it was healthy. It was steamed brown rice, some sauteed shrimp, steamed vegetables. Yeah, it was delicious. And then I'm like, kind of want some cereal, kind of want a cookie, I earned these treats from having endured the discomfort and all that.
Isn't that funny how quickly that narrative forms too?
I know, yeah. Especially for someone like me, that's very much like has built reward structures to sort of incentivize coping with adversity. I mean,
Yeah.
like adversity for
Like the only way we can address this adverse, like you say,
a little pain, a little
quotation adversity, is to reward
ourselves. And then like
if so deserving of
if you knew what some of this adversity was, you'd be like, buddy, you need to get some perspective. That is not adversity. That is a little bit of friction in your very comfortable suburban Midwestern life.
And that's how I think I would wager to say that's how a lot of people engage with their work, their creative work. And it's probably a big reason why a lot of it's not interesting.
Yeah. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but this is discomfort as well. One of the earliest experiences I have as an adult of surrendering to discomfort when faced with the fear of it. So in grad school, lived in Florida. It's hot as shit there in the summer. Very humid. I thought, Chicago summers were bad. It rains every day at 4 o'clock in Florida, and I'm in the Panhandle, not like in central
99% humidity.
Yeah,
You walk outside for 4
Yeah.
minutes,
you're
drenched.
drenched.
Yeah.
Um, it takes forever for the air conditioning in my black leather car to
Yeah.
cool everything off.
I grew up frequenting South Florida, so yeah.
I mean, you were in Tennessee, so
I guess, yeah,
worse
Tennessee
than
too,
Chicago.
but yeah, like the Jupiter area.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
So my wife and I, girlfriend at the time, are like, let's go to New Orleans. And we were going for like 3 days. Booked a little hotel, drove out there from Tallahassee. And I'm looking at the forecast and I'm like, it's like upper 90s every day, 100% humidity. And we're going to be out walking around in this shit. I mean, I literally would go from air conditioned space in Florida, the film school, classrooms, our apartment, wherever I was, Starbucks, wherever, the coffee shop, whatever. Everything was like, just get indoors as quickly as possible so you don't get sweaty.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, I don't want to be inside in New Orleans. I want to go to the city, experience the city. I want to be out in the French Quarter. I want to whatever. And I distinctly remember just kind of going, it just is what it is. You want the experience of this place more than you want the comfort of an air conditioned room. So just let it fucking go.
So how do we shield ourselves into the preemptive, like, psychological effect of this? You happen to be in a place where you were, okay, we're going to New Orleans, and then you were able to surrender.
Yeah.
But I think a big issue is we don't even allow ourselves to get to that place of going to New Orleans, and then you have to go through the dialogue of, okay, I'm going to surrender. A lot of people in our contemporary world are almost preemptively cutting themselves off from even imagining an experience like that.
Yeah.
Where they can then have the dialogue of, okay, how do I release myself to this experience? So what do you do then?
I know.
How do you it forces a bit. How do you force, or how do you index for those experiences, or is it just get a dartboard and do the Alex Soth?
Yeah.
Get a dartboard and I'm going to take photos there. Not that this is, I think of it in terms of photography and film. I know that's kind of where we default to, but how do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that
we're so comfortable. It's just it's hilarious that we expect to do anything that has any kind of humanity in it when we're this comfortable. We've removed all of the humanity from our day-to-day circumstance.
Well, what's funny is that the New Orleans experience, it was sort of like surrendering to being uncomfortable. And once I did and was there, we had a great time. It was like, once you weren't fighting against being hot, you just, I don't know, it just goes away.
Yeah.
And while I was at Florida State as well, we studied in London for 2 weeks, and two of my classmates, we decided to go to Berlin for the weekend. So we booked tickets, and we didn't book hotel rooms or anything, but we sought out an uncomfortable experience. Mm-hmm. So with New Orleans, it was, we really want to go to New Orleans. It's going to be hot. Give into the heat. Go to London. I really want to go to Berlin, but I want to not book a hotel because I want to just make it up as we go.
Yeah.
I want to be on that just want to feel alive by going.
Yeah.
I don't know. We don't have a place to stay, and I've told people this story.
That's frowned upon. Going back to the set example, it's going to be a shit show.
Yeah, and I've told people, they're like, oh God, I could never do that. I could never go somewhere and not know where we're staying. And we went to a hostel, they were full. Like, I went to a Holiday Inn, they're like, yeah, we don't have any rooms. And we kept walking. I mean, this is like at midnight in Berlin. And we sure enough stumbled across a small hotel, and they're like, "Yeah, we got a room for you guys," and it all worked out fine. But it was exhilarating to just the three of us had never been there before.
Yeah.
You dropped into the city. Fortunately, most everybody there spoke English, but lots of signage that's not in English. It's in German, and the resourcefulness of all of us just figuring it out, and we don't know what areas are good, bad, nothing, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
So both experiences, even though there was a different approach to them, ended up being fine and going.
You just
kind of
bend it and then
Yeah.
adapt.
and bring it back to bowel prep. There was something really powerful in just being really uncomfortable. And not even like uncomfortable, like my stomach is growling. I'm physically tired.
When people
I don't
fast
feel
all the time,
good.
right?
It's I can't. There's something that I'm so used to doing whenever I feel like it. Get up, get a drink, have this, have a snack, have whatever. Like you can't
Can't do it.
because you'll screw up the whole test. And there's just something really exhilarating about living with that.
Yeah.
And just kind of going, okay, this is what it is. And I mentioned earlier, and I won't tell a big story, but flying back from Poland last year, I had 3 hours left in the flight, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna sit here and see what it's like.
Raw dog.
I know. See what it's like. I have some friends that just like, they were able to fly business class, and other friends that have to have a lot of tools to help them get through it. They have anxiety, they struggle with that, and I'm like, how bad is it really to sit here and coach in a window seat of an international flight for 3 hours?
Omaha to Poland and back to Omaha in the air in no time at all.
Well,
Like this is a journey that 100 years ago would have taken.
right.
Oh
God,
it's ridiculous.
weeks.
It's ridiculous that's and then
And I don't want this to come off as self-congratulatory.
Yeah.
But because I have embraced comfort. My wife and I thermostat wars. Like in my mind, anything above 72 in the summertime is just unconscionable. What? 74 degrees in this house? Are you insane?
might as well be that.
Yeah. No, that's not happening. You know what I
Are we
mean?
living in an active volcano? Like, what's going on?
And that goes back to earlier, and we don't have to spend time on this, but that indulgence versus sacrifice spectrum I talked about for me. My wife and her dad and brother, like, they'll put the heat at 64 and the air conditioner at 78. And I just sit there and go, yeah, no.
Yeah.
70. I will not.
70 both ways.
I will not. I will not be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so, just to wrap it all up, I really, as I've gotten older and more comfortable, and more tools and more technology and more creature comforts, find it boring.
Well, we read from that passage from the Tao a couple of weeks ago
Yeah.
about everything is given context by its contrast. Essentially, you know what darkness is because you know what light is. You know what happiness is because you know what sadness is. You know what comfort is because you know what discomfort is. And if we suddenly remove one of those poles, you're gonna lose simultaneously. You're gonna lose the other one.
Yeah.
And then you just exist in like this purgatory, in a sense.
You know what activity I've done over the last 10 plus years that I think sort of implanted something subconsciously in me that makes me want to seek out uncomfortable experiences? Hiking. Going to Colorado and going on like a 7-mile hike up a mountain. I always make the joke when we're doing it because it gets grueling at times.
Yeah.
Like we chose this.
Yeah. Well, that's how
Why did we choose this? There's something about conquering your fears, staring literally at a mountain, going, "How are we going to get up there?"
every long run I've ever done,
Yeah.
just about, every like marathon I've ever run, there's always a point where you're just like, I signed up for this.
Yeah, I'm never gonna do this again. 2 weeks later, when's my next marathon?
Yeah. Yeah, I got it.
I'm ready to hike. Road tripping, that also
Yeah.
did it for us.
Well, and that's like, I'm like, I almost want to set some kind of for us, and then hopefully, if anybody listening is like, I feel this,
Yeah.
because that's when I first started playing around with the idea, I feel this. And I'm gonna set some kind of like, we can sit here and talk about how we don't like getting away from comfort, and then we leave and go back to our comfortable lives,
Absolutely.
and in 2 weeks
Yeah.
go by and you're upset. And well, we're just whatever. You talked about your trip to Poland, or the trip to New Orleans, and or when you guys went to when you took the trip in college, you
Yeah.
didn't know where you're going to stay. And it makes me think of all of last year. One of the most. I mean, in college we used to do this all the time, where we just leave. Oh, it's 11 o'clock midnight.
Yeah.
We have a long run at noon tomorrow. Fuck it, let's take a 3-hour road trip and like camp on a mountain, and then come back and we'll do the run, and then we'll sleep.
Nice.
But you do that stuff.
Yeah.
That's like the college type of, and then you at some point you're like,
Gotta set
can't handle that anymore. Like, I'm too old for that.
Can't do it.
Are you, or are you just telling yourself that story? And that's rhetorical. I think
Yeah.
the answer is the latter. It's you're telling yourself that story.
Sure.
I'm not built like that anymore. The best experience I had last year, I mean, there were a lot of great things, but the most inspired I think I got was, we took like a 4-day trip to San Diego.
Mhm.
4 days, it's not a lot.
Yeah, that's pretty short.
We flew in, we got food after we landed. We went on like a 60-mile bike ride, or it might have not been that much, but it was substantial. We went so really up the coast, from San Diego up the coast. It was beautiful. You're biking the water, the beaches in San Diego.
I've driven that.
We went on a hike. We rented a car and drove up the coast, up through Malibu and through LA, and I got crazy sunburn.
Mhm.
I mean, everybody got sick.
Yeah.
And we weren't sleeping a lot.
Very uncomfortable.
We did so much stuff, like so much in that 4-day period.
Yeah.
We went to a concert, like a Talking Heads cover band. It was unbelievable. I mean, we got breakfast every day. We were constantly in the car, constantly in motion, constantly doing this or that or this or that. And we were exhausted.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody was fucking tired, and we're sleeping in my buddy's apartment. It's got like a 1-bedroom apartment. There's no air conditioning. It was a little hot because, it was just unseasonably warm.
Right.
I mean, it was in the middle of summer, but San Diego is always,
Yeah.
it's always like 70 degrees. By all means, though, it was not, wake up, have a coffee, and do your thing, yada yada yada. And it was just the most inspiring, human I've felt in a while. Outside of taking some swings with work, where you're just like, you're in somebody's house, or you're in somebody's basement, or in their business, like deep in the wells of whatever, and you're just this. You don't quite understand. You're getting like this really intimate, personal, voyeuristic view into their life. Like those are the moments where I just feel like a real human.
Yes. Alive.
Yeah. And they're all uncomfortable. Or Audrey and I are taking a trip. We took a trip a couple of years ago. We were similar to your experience with the hostel, where we're driving. Where this was, in the South, and we were in North Carolina. We drove from Georgia to this place called Highlands, North Carolina. And the idea was to camp, and then we figured out, okay, a lot of the campsites are actually closed. So we're like, we're exhausted, and it is 12 o'clock at night. Let's find a hotel.
Yeah.
And all the pipes were frozen, so all the hotels were closed.
Oh no.
And then we find this motel, and we overpay a shit ton for like a very subpar room, and it's one of the best memories I have. We literally cooked. We used our gas stove to cook our dinner because none of the restaurants were open. It's like 1 o'clock. We cooked dinner on the patio of this motel. We're like the only ones there. Everything's closed in it. There's one person in the lobby. The room's not the cleanest, but it's fine. We put TCM on the TV and, hung out, slept in, woke up, TCM, that's my thing whenever we're anywhere. I just TCM's running right in front. And so just coats, I like stimulation, whether it's music, whether it's the Robert Rodriguez podcast, he talks about how like life isn't experiencing, it's re-experiencing. Like everything is fleeting.
Yeah.
Our memory is not made to hold on to things, so you have to capture them, and then you can revisit them at a different time. But so I definitely do that. But yeah, we just and that's one of the best memories I have to this day. And we were fighting about it that night. We're both frustrated, we're both tired, we're both grumpy, and it's cold and
Uncomfortable.
you can't see anything. It's raining and snowing, and we're driving up this mountain. If you've ever been to Highland, it's it's a mountain time.
Yeah.
And we're just like, we never fucking doing this again. And then the next day we wake up and we're like, if we would have planned this, it would suck. I mean, it wouldn't suck, but
Yeah.
it would just take all of the humanity out of it. So, yeah, like, how do we leave this? How do we leave this conversation better? How do we leave this conversation having pushed through that comfort a little bit? What do you, yeah, where do we go? How do we not just default back to,
Well,
everything in us is fighting for that comfortable
safety, security, predictability, and I think that's again, it's an ebb and flow. Because sometimes after a long trip, like I'm like, oh my god, I just want my own bed. I want to be able to turn the TV on. I want control over the temperature, whatever. So I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that.
Absolutely.
But I think what ends up happening is
I don't want to be traveling for a month months at a time. And especially me, I need to recharge.
Yeah.
I was exhausted after the 4 days.
Yeah.
The San Diego thing. Like the last day we just sat around.
Yeah.
But
I mean, you can build your endurance so that 4 days isn't as exhausting, or multiple times you do stuff, get more acclimated to it, whatever. But I think everybody needs to be able to break away from that electric state of unpredictability and not knowing, or like literal physical discomfort, and all of that, to something that's a little bit more safe and secure. But then again, it's much easier, at least in my experience, to go long stretches of a lot of comfort. And when, for me, you combine that with hitting 45 years old, and everything that you were giving so much time toward is not happening the way you thought it would, and that's not a commentary on, oh, I'm a failure, I didn't do this or do that, but sort of what you thought was going to happen didn't. You realize you have way less time to still try to accomplish that because of the compression of time. And I think it makes those stretches of comfort that much more difficult to manage, or to sort of experience,
to
cope with to a certain extent, because so you start for me, the compression of time is reading on the road. I'm like, I need to make time for experiences like this where I don't know what's coming. I'm in a place I'm not familiar with. I'm making it up as I go. And that could be everything from just, an afternoon of street photography in an area I don't know. It could be, a road trip out west, and I have no idea where I'm going, making it up as I go. It could be just going to a place that is physically uncomfortable, temperature-wise, heat, whatever.
hey, can we come shoot it? Like, can we come follow you around for a day?
Or and I've introduced discomfort into my life too, in smaller ways. You can make an argument that listening to a vinyl record is a more uncomfortable experience logistically
Yeah.
than it is to just stream music off of a HomePod, to use older cameras.
I definitely think they're related, but it is almost like a band-aid to a deeper, like,
I'm hoping that I'm experiencing comfort on multiple levels. So in very simple, everyday ways, with more friction and just the tools that I use to make stuff or just to experience the world, all the way up to getting thrown into the cauldron and trying to figure it out as you go, whether it's on my own or with friends. Hiking, is something in the middle. Like, let's go to Colorado and take a bag of minimal supplies and walk up a mountain and deal with physical discomfort, emotional ups and downs, all of the stuff that makes you go at that one point, which happens every time for me. I chose to do this. Why?
why?
And
It's like if you ask that question, you're doing the right thing almost.
and same thing with road trips. We feel that relief when we're home, and all the discomfort and unpredictability and insecurity and all that stuff goes away, and then slowly the desire for it again builds back up.
Well,
And
it's interesting too how urban life is almost corrected for so many variables of discomfort that there is this romanticism around the idea of travel or the road trip, or now you see it with I want to buy some land and start a farm. Like, there's all of these trends that we see, and if you do start to break those things apart, I think a lot of it is explained well by people just trying to find something that's not. Humans aren't meant to just exist.
yeah,
Humans aren't supposed to exist in a perfect environment. We're supposed to be in constant context or in constant battle with our circumstances and our environment. I think it's kind of wired into us, and that metaphor extends into the art that we try to make.
that's right.
It has to. And if it doesn't, then you're probably not making anything that's gonna hold itself up over any substantial period of time.
Well, especially because we
But-
can use the desire for comfort as an excuse to not start stuff. It
Yeah.
can be, well, the conditions aren't right. I don't have this. I go back to that story I told you about when my sister said that she was going to send me her iBook, and I had a crappy homemade PC. But I can't do anything until I have this comfortable tool that's better than what I have. So I'm going to let all the machinery grind.
We'll take a 2-week break.
Yeah, take a break and wait for it to show up in the mail. And I'm certainly someone that has my little. All right, got to put the movie on. I've got to, have this music playing in the background. I've got to turn the space heater on. This light's too bright. I got this whole checklist of stuff I have to go through sometimes to just set my wife's upstairs. How can I can't get. I
gotta get this place clean before I can do anything.
Right. That stuff. I can't possibly work the same way that I would if she wasn't here, or my kids are homesick. Just all that stuff. I don't have the conditions aren't met. Shut it down. And I think that
What are some of those core emotions that come up when you're trying to avoid discomfort? You just kind of nailed down a couple. I'm interested because I think about it with myself. Yeah, obviously the procrastination aspect.
resistance. Yeah.
Oh, I need to do this, I need to do that, or just avoiding.
Yeah, and I think
it totally applies. Yeah, writing is not comfortable in the same way that asking somebody if you can photograph them is not comfortable, or coordinating any kind of a production or starting a painting from a, none of that's comfortable.
No.
Any creative act is probably just uncomfortable. But what are those thoughts for you? What?
First thing I think of is, the thing that I'm thinking of, my vision of it is always ultimately better than whatever it is I end up making. So why not create these conditions that can be met so that I hang on to my perfect vision rather than my flawed result or flawed product, whatever you want to call it. The thing the work, the flawed work. I got a random inspiration to film a little intro to the video that I posted today on my YouTube channel. I'm like, I don't want to just start talking to camera. I'm like, what can I do? And I just had this flash of an idea. This is nothing profound, but I'm just like, well, what if I just film myself sitting at the computer and trying to come up with what I'm going to talk about for this video, because the subject of it, this Final Cut Pro 11.1 update, I'm just kind of like, I don't have anything to say about it. It's like, cool. Like, that's my reaction to it.
Yeah.
I want, and there's more to it than that, but I'm like, I'll just film myself sitting at the computer, staring at a blank piece of paper going, I got nothing. And then, staring at the update icon to update the app going, okay, I guess I'll do this.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know what it's going to feel like. I'm going to use my camcorder, my monitors. So all these little bumps and limitations and obstacles. And I'm like, I want to get this done somewhat efficiently or quickly because I have to leave for Vegas the next day. And just kind of put this thing together. And I'm like, this little sound design, all that stuff. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, is it exactly how I envisioned? Is what I envisioned better? Did I do this moment a little differently than what I originally thought? Yeah, but and again, this is nothing.
It gets back to the beginning of the episode.
But I'm really glad I did it.
Yeah, it's you're just solving a series of creative problems.
Well, there were multiple points to bring it back to what you said. Multiple points where I'm like, I can't put the camcorder the place that I want it. It just multiple points where I'm like, it's just I'm just gonna stop. And I think what helped is just sort of part of what inspired it honestly was the freshness of the Robert Rodriguez podcast, which is again so grateful to our relationship that we send this stuff back and forth to each other, because had I not listened to that, I may not have even acted initially on making it. I might have just been like, it's just easier to sit in the chair and be like, okay, so this.
That's another thing that I think is so funny that you just hit on, that I've been thinking a lot about, is sometimes I get so discouraged, to do things, like maybe because of the discomfort, friction, procrastination, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And nothing brings me out of it like another human influencing. Like, we're so group-minded. Most of us. Yeah. Some people, I'm sure, can sit in a room and write for days and days and days, and it's all amazing.
Yeah.
But again, for us mere mortals, we're so. You almost have to have some kind of accountability or some kind of influence, some kind of social influence, like a mimetic influence that you can build off of. You're talking about you wouldn't have done it without it. There's so many things where I'm just like, I can do something for a week, for a month, all day long.
Yeah.
But then when it gets hard, I rely on those influences to be motivated to push through.
Well, I think the thing that was interesting about what Robert said was that I think part of me goes, well, you should really probably sit down and kind of write out the shots, get a little text-based storyboard, plan it a little better or whatever. And I kind of went, I generally see in my mind
Yeah.
the, shot, reverse shot, close up on this. Like, I basically know what the coverage is. And guess what? If I'm sitting in the edit bay and I miss a shot,
You can do it again.
just get it. It's not like the set is off limits.
Yeah.
It's your freaking studio.
Yeah.
So that's like, oh, yeah, I didn't get this shot. Then get it.
Yeah.
So it did happen. I had filmed myself at my main computer and had done the Final Cut update. And I'm like, well, I need a close up of the update button. I didn't get a close up of it. I can't just zoom in on it. It's too far away. Like, so I go to my Mac Mini. I'm like, oh shit, I did the update on this computer. Luckily, my dumbass has 3 computers. So I pulled out my laptop and I'm like, well, it's not the same angle. I'm like,
Who cares?
who cares?
Yeah.
The close up of the update, whatever. It worked fine.
Yeah.
And so there was something sort of, it's this all seems so basic.
It does, but
But
it's something that
We just overcomplicate this shit and make
yeah.
these little.
I told you the Herzog quote the other day
Yeah.
where he said, we literally had this conversation yesterday, and this is in his autobiography, and he's talking about learning about film.
Yeah.
And he says, the only formal education that I ever got about how to make film, we're talking one of the best
Yeah.
working directors alive right now.
Yeah.
And I mean, past that, it's completely subjective. I mean, he's in the pantheon. Like, it's,
Yeah.
His formal education, as he defined it, was 19 pages of encyclopedia on cinema and camera.
Yeah.
It's like, I think that's all you really need, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And it just goes to show how overcomplicated we make everything. And instead of, and he goes on to say from that, you don't learn to write great poetry by critiquing great poetry.
That's right.
You don't learn to make great films by watching film. You learn to do it by doing what you want to do. And we give ourselves, and I think especially for those of us that are more introverted, you can spend all of your time thinking about why this can't happen, or why you shouldn't do this, or why this is not a good idea. And just start moving. Start solving the problems in a creative way and see what comes out of it. And I mean, that is always going to serve you better than sitting there and overthinking anything.
Well, one thing I think Werner and Robert would say, and Robert said it in the podcast, I think when he was relating to having to exercise because he kept having back issues, and saying to himself, I'm not an athlete, I don't like working out, all that stuff. He said, "You're your own worst enemy."
Yeah.
This isn't like some profound realization. Every time I think about when I don't have the conditions aren't met, or I can't film this intro because I don't have the right thing, or all this bullshit. Yeah, you're just your own worst enemy.
Yeah, you're just hurting yourself.
And I think Berner would say that in a heartbeat. And I see those two, and while they may make things that I enjoy in different ways, I'm not like going hard on Spy Kids. I don't think it's bad. But it's just, I'm going to watch a bunch of people drag a boat over a mountain, or a guy get eaten by a grizzly bear, spoiler alert, before I watch the Spy Kids. But I have to respect the shit out of the fact that both of them, at least when it comes to their art and creativity, don't let themselves be their own worst enemy. Yeah. They have figured that part out and have other things that they can do.
I mean, it's making a film for $7,000 with whatever you have on hand, or it's
Rebel Without a Crew,
or it's stealing your camera,
right,
to make your first films.
Yeah, there was nothing
by any means necessary. I'm going to do this,
and I think bringing it back to the comfort thing again for me. the vision I have of the thing I want to make is better than what I might end up making. So that fear component. And I have to get uncomfortable.
Cut it out, yeah.
I have to go from an indulgent life to a sacrificial life to be able to make the thing that I want to make. And those things certainly get in the way. And while I'm happy with the things that I've made from a couple of YouTube channels and this podcast and some of the photographs I've made, when you really look at how much time I've spent making things to how much time I've spent safe and comfortable and secure, you know, to me, that's not a good ratio. It is, especially with what I hoped to accomplish, as I set out on this journey, really sort of falling into a creative life through my undergrad as in acting, but then like deliberately making a choice. Okay, that doesn't work. I see what I want to do, and I'm gonna go for it, and go hard for it. Different levels of focus and concentration and sacrifice and all of that stuff, and then falling out of it. Certainly peaks and valleys, but often the valleys are much longer and much more sustained than the time where I'm in a place of discomfort, sacrifice, surrender, all of that to like making something.
Well, let's not leave it there. Let's hold each other accountable.
Yeah.
I feel like we have a pretty good lock on the other person's kind of, strengths, weaknesses, creative ambitions, things like that. Let's, because we could leave this and, it's just another conversation. But yeah, and we have a community out there that's listening to this too. Like, we are mimetic creatures at the end of the day. And some people aren't. I feel like a lot of people are. And when things get uncomfortable, having somebody to help them through that, or just remind them, this is why you're doing that, or this is going to happen.
Yeah.
And everything in your body is going to tell you to do this, but we need to retrain that. We need to recontextualize that. And so I don't know what that looks like, but in the spirit of, just jump in and start solving the creative problems just as they come up. Let's just hold each other accountable and figure out. Because I think we both want to be more uncomfortable.
Yes.
I think at the end of the day, if we were both making things that we cared about, and that got us fired up and taught us things about the world and ourselves and people around us, I think we're going to be happy here. And whenever we sit down for these, there's going to be more energy. That's all we really are craving. So let's hold each other. I don't know what that looks like, but
No.
Let's make an effort to figure it out.
Yeah, I don't want to get really good at talking about making work.
Yeah, exactly.
And my experience of some of the work I make, because I think like you mentioned about somebody who has a critique of poetry or critic of poetry, I don't want to be someone that talks about writing poetry or talks about making work more than I actually spend time.
It's one of the biggest downfalls of what a lot of what I see is, I'm guilty of it just as much. Yeah, you're talking about making the thing instead of making the thing. Just make the thing. Like, we can still do this.
Yeah.
And it's gonna have so much more truth to it if we're actually, and it's not like we don't make, but I think we both want to not pick up the pace, but maybe not even like on an external scale, but internally we want that satisfaction. We want to create more.
Right.
Yeah, I think starts with a little accountability, and we can, also just pushing for discomfort. Like, I think it's really fascinating. You hear a lot of people that read on the road when they're really young, and and it gets flack in the literary circles, but whatever.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, your perspective. You sat down and you're like, I'm reading this book. It makes me. I was like, is it making you want to go on a road trip, or kind of just be? And you're like, it becomes really clear how, the context being the traditional Western or Americanized midlife crisis.
Yeah.
Reading through it after you have these constraints to life gives you a feeling of. I mean, you describe it. Yeah.
It makes me, for me, it makes me, a road trip as a entry point to making work.
Yeah.
For me, it relates back to making work. Like, I certainly see the value in going on a road trip. You don't know how you're going to get there. You don't know where you're going to stay. You don't know what you're going to eat. You don't have a lot of money, whatever those constraints are. But, for me, barreling into the unknown to make something. And I think I talked to you earlier today about how just sort of randomly, when I was transitioning from being at home to your place and I had a few errands to run, I just like out of nowhere got sort of a disembodied nervousness, and I clocked it, and I'm like really nervous right now. Sometimes you get nervous like in your belly. This was sort of like right under my actual stomach, and I'm just like, what is this? And I'm at the precipice right now. I'm going to Las Vegas tomorrow, and while I have an Airbnb with my friends and all that stuff, there's lots of unknowns for me as someone who likes to have a cartography and have everything mapped. Multiple personalities mixing together. Where are we going to eat? Are there going to be conflicts of interest? Am I going to be able to get up? And not conflicts of interest, but just sort of like, well, this person wants to do this person wants to do that.
Who do I have to engage with?
Yeah. Is my introvert going to come out? Who am I going to run into that maybe I look up to, or maybe I'm intimidated by? What brands am I going to talk to? How much sort of business am I going to shake hands on and, get the commerce side going? So there's just like all these unknowns. And the nervousness, I think, was, I just sat there and I went, this is your body going into a fight or flight state because you're staring at the unknown. You can't control it. And part of you wants to flee to comfort. You want to sit on the couch and watch YouTube, or even comfort in just making, I got to watch out there just like sitting in my studio and making a YouTube video, or going out around Omaha with a Digicam and taking some photos like, oh, I'm doing it. I'm doing the thing.
Doing a lot.
Yeah, like, well, okay.
Not really.
Yeah, because that has gotten all comfortable. You've kind of figured all that out. Have you actually edited the photos that you took? Have you put it together into a book, or sequenced them, printed them?
Do you even like it?
Have you?
Is it just an act?
Yeah.
I had this thought yesterday because, and I mean, I index in the practice of it whenever I have these thoughts, because I think that is that's a useful side of things. But yeah, do I care about any of these? Is this the work that I really?
Right.
Or is this just it's easy, you drive, or park,
That's right. That's right.
Put the headphones on.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I've been continuing with that a lot recently as the weather's got warmer. I'm just like, you don't give like, this is fun, and the practice is very useful, and I love the idea of, getting uncomfortable in that aspect. I don't really want to walk around for 5 hours.
Yeah.
Well, that's what it is. That's what this is.
That's,
you can go out and spend 40 hours walking and get nothing. Maybe you get several things that you care about, but
yeah.
I think that's important. But at the same time, it's all very cozy and
And I just had an image of sort of a trinity, right? For us, talking about work and talking about what we are making, even if it's not enough, and talking about what we're consuming, right? So double feature at film streams, YouTube videos, a podcast, reading on the road. Like, hey, I'm doing the work, right? I'm consuming all this stuff and I'm filtering it into what I want to do. And then, the actual work, whether it's for me a YouTube video or the work that would be really hard, which is taking the photography, editing it. Is this something? Is there a small book? Is there a gallery? Whatever. Like, oh God, if I had to actually like figure out how to get the money to make this stuff, and then find a gallery space, get Alex involved.
Yeah.
Do we is there an open building? Who do I have to call? No, too much work.
Yeah. Can't do it.
And so does that in the Trinity there that I described, the work part is sort of the easiest one to not do.
Yeah.
It's real easy to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, we
it's
sit down.
really easy to consume it.
We're having these conversations. It's like, oh, look, we're making all these episodes and we're doing all this. And it's like, it's super
prolific.
Easy. You sit down and we read this and I went through all these books and I found all these movies and watched
That's right.
That's the easy
part.
part.
These guys are, these guys, wow.
No, that's the easy thing. We're going to do that anyways.
Where's the work?
Yeah. Now, can I see what it?
Yeah.
What's
this all added up to?
Yeah. And that's what that's.
Final cut video?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like I'm dragging a ship across the mountain.
Yeah.
I made a final update video.
That's right.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah. I think this is something we continue to revisit over the next year. And I don't want to talk about it. I want to start to try to, we'll definitely hold each other accountable, but also, what does that direction look like? Let's start moving towards that direction in a forceful way. Like, hey, get as uncomfortable as we can be within reasonable, and see what does that look like after a year.
Yeah.
Let's mark it. Keep an eye on them. When we're just creatively solving problems and we're constantly seeking new problems to solve, what does that look like? What does that add up to over the course of 6 months, 12 months?
Yeah.
And you have the perfect vehicle to kind of match it down. But I'd love to just really quick. We're definitely over time, and I know you've got to get out of here. But and I don't know,
7 o'clock.
I don't think it has anything to really do with what we're talking about. I don't know, but I sent you this quote this morning.
It's good.
And I just kind of want to get it down on.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, just get it down on the microphone so it doesn't. Do you know what page that was on? I should have highlighted it. Yeah. Sure. And so this is Basho, and it's the narrow road to the deep north and other travel sketches. So he's like Japanese master of haiku. And I'm not going to get into the haiku as like a very westernized interpretation. It's kind of goofy, but then there's like it's a very serious art form at its core. Anyways,
the page number on here.
Oh no! What is the?
It's on the right side.
Okay.
And the first words are "Go to the pine." It's in the middle of the page. Go to the pine if you want to learn.
All right. Let's see here. Here we go.
There it is.
Okay. So I'll just read this. Maybe we do a quick minute on it. Okay. Jump out of here. Go to the pine if you want to learn about the pine, or to the bamboo if you want to learn about the bamboo. And in doing so, you must leave your subjective preoccupation with yourself. Otherwise, you impose yourself on the object and do not learn. Your poetry issues of its own accord when you and the object have become one. When you have plunged deep enough into the object to see something like a hidden glimmering there. However well phrased your poetry may be, if your feeling is not natural, if the object and yourself are separate, then your poetry is not true poetry, but merely your subjective counterfeit. Yeah. It's just floored me when I read it this morning. So
yeah, it sort of goes back to for me, you're your own worst enemy. Get out of the way.
Yeah.
Surrender. Get connected.
Stop imposing yourself.
Yeah.
Your interpretation onto your work, or this is what are people going to think of this?
Mm-hmm.
What's the reaction going to be to this? Are people going to think of me in the way that I want people to think of me if I make this?
Mm-hmm.
stop. Get out of the damn way.
Yeah, and again, I think this goes back to other stuff.
Who gives a shit at the end of the day? You know?
Seeking that truth and purity, and I think that's exactly what that is. Like go to the bamboo and get connected. I mean, it sounds like when I say that though, like okay, like make a conscious, do something conscious to like create. I don't think that's how it works. It's going to happen when it happens, and you have to.
It's not conscious. In my opinion, at least the good stuff. It's not conscious, and it's not coming from you.
Mm-hmm.
It's subconscious. You're a vehicle for something.
Yeah.
And if it is coming from you, it's probably not the good stuff.
Yeah. And I think that's part of what has drawn me to photography so much, sort of twofold. It's one thing on a film set, like managing a bunch of people and also trying to like get into the flow and make work. There's something about just you and your surroundings and giving into all of it, and just it just kind of happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like when I look at some of those Eggleston photos, that the average person might go, who cares about these clouds? Who cares about those trees? I think that you can feel it in the photo.
When you have plunged deep enough into the object to see something like a hidden glimmer in there, however well phrased your poetry may be, if your feeling is not natural, if the object and yourself are separate, then your poetry is not true poetry, but merely your subjective counterfeit. Subjective counterfeit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Wow.
You go to you see a photograph or a movie or whatever, and subjective counterfeit. Maybe
So
it's well executed. There's technical mastery going on there, or whatever. But it's just like this is no.
yeah, highly recommend this.
Yeah, that was a beautiful passage.
So this is.
Thanks for sharing that with me earlier.
Yeah, it's the Penguin Classics, The Narrow Road to the Deep North, and other travel sketches. So I read
Link in the show notes.
I read the sketches first.
Yeah.
And I skipped the intro. I was like, gosh, 50-page introduction. And then, but Penguin generally does a pretty good job with the introductions. And I was like grumpy about it. And I was like, okay,
I get grumpy.
I'm gonna read the introduction. And the introduction was fantastic. And that's pulled from the introduction. And he talks about how he matures, how his work matures, and kind of traces his influences from the early influences to then how the work kind of matures as he starts to separate himself from his sense of self. And that it just the tracing, how that traces is fascinating. There's one thing in here where it's like the work wasn't true because it was too engaged with the self. And the sketches are brilliant, obviously. The translation is brilliant, and then the introduction is worth the price of admission too. Highly recommend it. And Penguin always does a great job. But it's there.
Well, I can't wait to add that one to the pile, my friend.
Well, that's a good place to tie it up.
It had been a golden afternoon, and I remember having the familiar conviction that life was beginning over again with the sunrise.